everyone. We're going to go ahead and get things underway here. Welcome to our Normalizing Black Wealth series that's in partnership with UBS. I love UBS. They're such an important ally for founders and funders who are building this inclusive equity ecosystem, especially for entrepreneurs out there and underserved groups. And for that, I'm super, super grateful. For everyone joining us today in the audience, please know that you guys are the key to normalizing conversations around Black wealth. So thank you for not only being here with us right now, but for joining us in the work ahead, because it's still a very, very long road ahead. For those of you who don't already know me, I'm Corey Hale, the CEO of Culture Banks, and we're going to unpack the importance of normalizing Black future wealth that reimagines this sort of outlook to ensure the next generation understands the foundations of creating wealth. Also, I want to go ahead and start by having Jamie Sears join me. She is the head of community affairs and corporate responsibility for UBS Americas and has been our partner in this Normalizing Black Wealth series. Jamie, hi.
Hi, Corey.
You're there. Jamie, we have an exciting conversation today. Actually, we kind of got cut off in our pre-discussion before as our tech person's like, it's 1 o'clock, it's time to start. But I'd love to actually pick that back up. But before we get into all of that and kick off today's discussion, can you just share what you're looking forward to hearing from our panelists today about normalizing the future of Black wealth?
Yes, thank you, Corey. It's such a pleasure to partner with you and Culture Banks on this series. Your point of view as a founder in business and media just has allowed us to explore the many layers and levers that contribute to normalizing Black wealth. And I think through this have really helped us reckon with the systems that not only contribute to the racial wealth gap and how they've kept Black communities from building generational wealth for centuries here in the US, but you've also put a shine on the entrepreneurs, investors, and the ecosystem builders who are changing this. And at UBS, we're the world's largest global wealth manager, and our operating mandate is to help clients grow and sustain their wealth. But we know the playing field is not a level one. There are historic and far-reaching policies and practices that have kept Black households from having access to credit and asset building opportunities, which in turn has kept them out of important wealth building opportunities like homeownership or entrepreneurship. In fact, Black consumers are more than twice as likely to be credit invisible, having no credit history to speak of. And so this is, one of the factors that has led to growing inequality among many communities. This inequity requires disruption. And what I'm really looking forward to today in this discussion is hearing from, those leading the charge. And I was saying earlier that you know and you find the best people for these conversations. So excited to hear from Michael Broughton, founder of Perch Credit, and what he's doing with his fintech company. And I won't steal your thunder in terms of introductions or what they have to say today, but honestly, hearing about someone who's building a company around building credit using history of recurring expenses like your rent, I just think is brilliant. And I cannot believe that he is 22 years old. And, speaking of founders, we hear the statistic around Black founders receiving less than 1% of total venture funding in the US. And Corey, you've done just such an amazing job throughout the series showcasing the significant role that investors play in getting more capital to Black founders. And so excited to hear from Candice Matthews-Burkeen, GP and co-founder of Lightship Capital. I love that, I think Candice is so inspiring because she's a part of this rising group of investors, not only starting funds, but who are investing with this focus on underrepresented people and places, especially BIPOC communities. And she's doing that in the mighty Midwest. And I really think that's where smart money knows huge market opportunity when you match, capital to talent. And then, of course, I'm so excited to be joined by my colleague, Mark Wilkins, our managing director in private wealth at UBS. He's, one of the originators of this Normalizing Black Wealth series with you. He's back today. He's such an extraordinary leader and one of the best in our business. And I'm really proud to call him a friend as well. So I will turn it back to you. I just want to give you all really a heartfelt thank you for the additional job, frankly, that you all have taken on to educate people about the real challenges that exist, as well as the tremendous opportunity we have to invest in Black founders and fund managers. I know it is a ton of work, and I know that we all benefit from it. So just thank you again. And with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks so much, Jamie. We love having you, give your ideas on what to look forward to in the conversation. So thank you. And with that, everyone, we're going to jump right into everyone. So sorry, we did a major technical difficulty that we're going to have to follow up with Zoom about there. Extremely sorry about that. Thank you all of our participants for hanging in there. I'm sure you guys actually had to come back in to the webinar, but I'm going to pick up right where I was, which is introducing our great panelists today. And they include Mark Wilkins, who, as Jamie mentioned earlier, is one of her UBS colleagues, a private wealth advisor and managing director at UBS, who proudly serves as the executive sponsor for Mosaic, the employee organization at the company, which promotes cultural diversity and inclusion within the firm. He's been named a top advisor by Barron's every year since 2013 to 2020, and best in state wealth advisor by Forbes since 2019. And he actually has a really great article out about him currently on Barron's, I think just came out last month, that you guys should check out, which is all about impact being a part of people's wealth strategy. We also have serial entrepreneur and investor Candice Matthews-Brackeen, who is the general partner at Lightship Capital, which is a Cincinnati-based venture capital firm dedicated to backing underrepresented entrepreneurs in the Midwest. She's also the founder and CEO of Hillman, an entrepreneur education program that focuses on tech startups led by underrepresented entrepreneurs. And finally, last but definitely not least, we have Michael Broughton, who is the co-founder and CEO of Perch Credit. The company aims to boost credit scores of those in underserved communities. So far, he's actually secured a $2.5 million seed round investment at the end of last year. And one of his main investors includes none other than hip hop icon Jay-Z through his Marcy Ventures Projects Fund. So thank you all for being part of this conversation today. Making sure you can see everyone. Oh, you guys are all on mute.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for having us.
Perfect. We just need to unmute everyone there. All right. I'm going to just start off with some quick questions. And Mike, I'm going to go ahead and start with you, because the majority of Black founders actually have a very hard time raising $1 million plus, just getting into that 7-figure club. Can you tell us about your path to becoming a venture-backed company, along with the super unique and very, very cool space that Perch Credit operates in?
Yeah, and thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this conversation. I think for me, I'll quickly overlay my story, then kind of go into like the real issue of just like getting more Black founders in the space. Mine was honestly extremely rare, I would say. I had early on realized that there was a big problem with access to credit during my days in college, and was really just looking for a solution. I knew very little about entrepreneurship. It's something that you're not taught in school, not even in college. And I knew that there was just a problem I wanted to solve. The hard part was getting the resources to actually solve that problem. I luckily stumbled across Marcy Venture Partners at a pitch competition actually with Techstars called Propel back in 2019. But before that, I had talked to multiple funds, multiple investors, trying to just learn VC in and out, and was honestly shut down everywhere. It's definitely not easy to get your foot in the door, I guess to say, especially when there's not that many resources around you. And I think also being a Black founder just made that 10 times harder. I think at the same time, like once we got that first check from Jay-Z and Marcy Venture Partners, it definitely gave us validation. I think people were then able to turn around and say, okay, let's actually hear about what you're building. And we've been growing extremely fast ever since that day. And 2020 was a great year for us. So I do think that this conversation is going to spiral into something really cool around just like this problem of like, how do you give a starting line to Black founders in the Black community and creating generational wealth and just opportunities. But yeah, my story was really unique to add to that.
Well, your story is really cool. And actually, we'll get into a little bit more about Perch Credit and actually how you came into dropping out of college to be able to run this startup full time. But I want to bring in Candice and Mark, who really to me are leaders and at the forefront of this inclusive capital space and conversation. So I met Candice through Mark without knowing that Mark was actually an LP in Candice's fund. So I want to start with you, Candice, especially because in the VC space, it just doesn't look a lot like you and I. Not just being women, women of color, Black women, 26% of the people are Asian, only 3% of VCs fall into this Black category. I would love for you to first just tell our audience about Lightship Capital and the unique space that you operate in, but why your approach creates this super great untapped market opportunity that traditional VCs wouldn't really be focused on.
Yeah, so Lightship Capital, we're raising a $50 million fund focused on underrepresented founders. So for us, that means Black, Indigenous, people of color, people who identify as women, those in the LGBTQ community, as well as those who have disabilities. So that's our demography focus. Geographically, we're in the mighty middle of the country. That's geography slightly larger than the Midwest. And focused on 5 sectors. So consumer packaged goods and services, e-commerce, sustainability, artificial intelligence, and healthcare. Things we do really well here in this portion of the country. People love the Midwest. If you attended the University of Michigan and you see somebody and you walk down the street and they're wearing that M on their hat, you say "Go Blue" when you cross them. When you're in in the Cincinnati area and you see that logo for the Bengals, you say "Hoo Day." People are ravenous about where they're from in the Midwest, and they want to give back and they want to be involved. They also realize that some of the biggest brands in the world started here in this portion of the country. I'm just blocks away from Procter & Gamble, one of the largest CPG companies in the country, who's also happens to be one of our LPs in the fund. So that's why we started it this way. We have great assets here. Companies can exit to these companies as well. And then if I really, boil it down to the demography, this is just an overlooked market. More often than not, someone is in the minority. Women are minorities, people of color are minorities, people with disabilities are minorities. There's only a small segment of the population that are actually not, and that's white males. So if we kind of just flip this entire story, we actually just have nothing but an open ocean to fish out of. And I've said plenty of times, and other people have said also, intelligence is distributed equally around the country, but opportunity isn't. So that's really all we're doing here, is distributing opportunity.
Well, you guys are doing a great job of doing that. You're invested in, is it 10 companies at this point, Candice?
We are at 9 right now. We'll do 3 more in the next 45 days.
Yeah, well, I want to take this opportunity to shout out Kobe Wu from Visual, one of our original Culture Bank's game changers. I'm talking 2018, way back in the day. We met at a random event. And so I love the ad tech company that she's built and the great work that she and her team are doing. Mark, you are a guy who knows all about building wealth. And in our first webinar, which was last year, you said that a lot of people need to understand the fundamentals and the basics around building wealth so that perhaps one day they can become a client of yours. But it's not going to happen, right, by just going to work every day. We need more people building companies and people like Candice, right, investing in these companies. Yeah,
building wealth is really around ownership, right? It's really around equity. And at the end of the day, that's what we have to, from an ecosystem standpoint, build for BIPOC communities in the country. And from where I sit, for me, this is a real attempt at leadership from behind, right? If I can help be catalytic for capital for Candice and her peers, right? They can be catalytic in supporting founders like Michael and his peers. And honestly, that's what gets me up out of bed every day. It's the most exciting thing that I do in my life right now. And I'm all in with it. And it's an attempt that all of us need to sort of get behind to be catalytic in this space, because Michael's out there where the rubber meets the road, right? He is grinding every day, and wealth is not built quickly. Wealth is actually, and it's also, as you pointed out, not necessarily built from having a job. That may or may not be a good start, but wealth is built from owning something. and then doing the grind to build it. That's how wealth is created. We need more examples of that. We need more capital to do that. I always like to say that capitalism is pretty difficult without capital, and a lot less fun. So I'm out there trying to beat the bushes and drum that up.
Mark, you once actually also said to me that wealth creation and investing, right, that they're not the same thing. Can you explain why it's important for people to really understand the difference between those two?
Yeah, and I even think it's broader than just those two. I think the world is a little bit caught up in many ways on trading, not even investing, not even wealth creation. What Michael's out there doing and what Candice is investing in are people are out there actually doing work to own and build something. One of the stories I like to think about all the time is that Warren Buffett, 95% of his money was made after the age of 65. And it really does go back to, it's not necessarily quick, but the more that you put your own time, effort, sweat equity in and grind into doing it, like Michael's doing, that's how you build great wealth. Then there's this whole other concept of once you've built it, the government taking it away through estate taxes and not letting it go to your family. That's a problem I want us to get to, but we got to begin with the end in mind and understand that there are issues around that. And that's what I want founders, people who are building businesses and building wealth, thinking it totally through to the end.
Wow, Michael, I wonder what you have to say to that. I mean, Michael's 22 years old. I don't know if you told your age before, but I just shouted it out to everyone. And then you say something like Warren Buffett didn't really accumulate the majority of his wealth until he was on the other side of 60. Mike, when you hear something like that as a founder very early in their journey that's, had some success out of the gate, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's a lot to unpack there. I think first, I've been helping my parents pay bills since I was 16 when I got my first job at McDonald's. I still help them to this day. But yeah, starting their roots
right here.
But like with that, I mean, I actually was just able to help my parents get their first ever home in Texas. And it's not like I have like extreme wealth right now, but I've been given a level of access where, like you said, like I don't need a job to, like, I don't work for money. Like money kind of naturally is in the circulation of my life at this point, and I can focus on this bigger mission of Perch, making access, helping people, and I don't have to worry about working 9 to 5 to help make sure that my family can stay okay. And I think that level of just like, I didn't go into Perch or the startup life thinking that I would be able to do that. It just naturally came with the opportunity that was given to me, like you're saying, Mark, by just giving people like me or people like Candice are investing in opportunity to really think bigger than the situation that they may have started in. So yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying here.
Well, we all have a long road ahead if we're going to have to wait until our mid to late 60s to really start accumulating wealth. But Candice, and I failed to mention that the fund is also alongside your husband, Brian. So I'm going to shout him out as well. That's okay. We don't have to give him any shine right now.
That's okay. I'm his boss at home and at work.
Yes, you are his boss, right? We don't need to shout him out during this. But what you guys have been able to build, and I know Keisha over at Impact America Fund, and she was a part of our series a little while ago. This sort of grind that you all have as well to go out and build these funds. I mean, she was able to close over $50 million. Mark, you were able to have UBS be a part of what she was building, but really that struggle to be able to get the money to funders like yourself, Candice, like what is that path like for people of color? Because I know a lot of white people that have funds and they raise $100 million like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, but my job is not as hard as Mike's job, right? So, I mean, he's the one doing the work every day. I'm just going to ask for money to give to him. This is it. The hardest part is finding the people. Once we're in a room and we're having conversations with people, and we're kind of breaking down the barriers of being humans, that's the easy part. Now, occasionally these things go back to committee, and people are asymptomatic for bias in committee. And you don't know why they're saying no. So sometimes there's that just one person who just can't get over the hump because of what I look like or what Brian looks like. But I would say for the most part, I mean, we've gotten more yeses than nos, right? Our batting average is actually pretty good right now. But it is difficult. It is incredibly difficult. But we do this work every day, and we're going to keep doing this work so we can continue deploying capital. Being able to like get through our first year and hit our goal of investing in 12 companies, we did it, right? And so we're just going to keep grinding our way through it. And hopefully we are a signal to the rest of the market that they should invest in the other people who are coming up with us.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to add, I want to sort of expand on that is just, the pattern matching goes on everywhere, right? It's rampant. One of the things that I try and do, I'll throw this out there too for everybody, is to help potential investors understand the patterns that they're in and why this is actually, I think, the ultimate investment in the pattern. I actually think that BIPOC communities are the best emerging market on the planet, right? We can invest using US dollars. We can, they're in, close to where everybody lives. This is actually a phenomenally undervalued investment opportunity. And what I pose to people then is what are the other undervalued investment opportunities that you're looking at? I'll leave it at that because there aren't many undervalued opportunities at this point in the market cycle. Michael and his team, and actually not only him and his team, but the problem that they're solving is a massive TAM, right? And if you want to make big money, you actually have to solve a big problem. And Michael's out there doing it. And I see Candice and to some extent Brian, a little bit less than Candice, but I see them out there every day looking for the Michaels of the world. And to me, the simple part is trying to find money for them. But once we find money for them, great things are going to happen. Not just with Candice and Michael, but for the people that Michael employs, the customers that he helps, and it's a virtuous cycle.
Right. And a lot of that really goes to this point that I'm trying to make today about really building for the future of wealth. And Mark, you have kids, Candice, you have kids who are younger, I think, than Mark's kids. But I remember, Mark, you said that when my kids were little, like we just taught them how to count in billions because we wanted them to think more broadly. Candice, what are some of the things that you try to instill in your kids to get them to start thinking about wealth right now?
Yeah, so both of my children are on an app called Greenlight, and so they get their allowance every 2 weeks. Within that app, they're able to get loans from their parents. They're able to make investments into stocks, and so we talk about stock trades at dinner time. And so they're learning how to manage their money. I can say that my youngest son is the candy kid at school. So he comes home with a pocket full of cash, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so he's learning how to use that money to flip and then sell additional things at school. It's a very interesting model for a kid at a private school, but that's what he's up to. But for us, we're sharing with them how to manage their own money right now, but then also they go with us when we buy investment properties. So they see the process there. They are watching tons of pitches, right? At some point, if anybody's tracking kids of investors, you really should probably watch out. Those kids are amazing.
Wait, that's an idea. That could be a new company, right?
That could be a new company. But I would say just involving children from the beginning, I think is probably the most important thing. My parents kind of shied away from it. I'm first generation college student, all of those things. And so it was kind of taboo to talk about money because we didn't have any. And so I think you have to talk about it whether or not you have it or not, so people understand how to manage their capital.
The other thing I would sort of add to that from a practitioner standpoint, not just with my own children, but with clients who have children and grandchildren, is that we're going to have to get to this sort of as a culture. There's a conversation that goes from money to wealth, and what is wealth? Wealth is actually some combination of your money plus your values, right? And so not only managing good money behavior, maybe teaching my children to count 1 billion plus 1 billion is 2 billion, but it's also around being a good human being, understanding who you are, understanding the privileges that you have in life, because what we're talking about here is creating money, creating wealth, and creating privilege, right? And helping our children understand the privileges that they have, and being good humans about giving back their own time, talent, and treasure, frankly, from a pretty young age.
Yeah, no, I love that. And Michael, you mentioned that you or actually a first generation college student, and I alluded to this earlier, but you did drop out of school to be able to go full time into your startup. As I like to say, that's what a lot of the greats do who actually don't look like us, right? From Bill Gates to Zuckerberg, the list goes on and on, right? Of the greats that dropped out of really good schools. And I know that you were at USC down there in Southern California before to run this company. What was that transition like for you? Not just personally, but also from your family perspective of you being the first one, which actually I don't know if we did mention this, the first one in your family to even go to college. And then now you're telling people that you're dropping out of college.
It was scary. I remember the day. It was February 2nd when I decided to drop out of school. February 3rd, I called my parents and told them, hey, I'm thinking about dropping out. Got the 6-hour-long lecture about how it was a terrible decision. And at the end, I was like, I already did it. And it was this like very pivotal moment where my family have never been exposed to VC. The most money we ever had in our account was maybe like 5K, and that was like amazing. And like they have never seen this life that I was about to explore, and it was extreme risk. I didn't know what I was getting into. I was throwing away a huge opportunity with university. I also threw away an internship at Bloomberg to go full time on Perch. And I think that there was this, and maybe this loops back into the conversation that we're talking about. It's like, how did I know that I would be okay at the end? Like, how did I know that I would have the opportunity to actually build Perch? And I threw away everything to make that happen. And I know there's other kids out there, or other just like founders who have this level of, okay, if my startup fails, I'll be fine. But one thing that I have, and I think honestly, a lot of Black founders have as well, is they know if this fails, they have nothing else supporting them. Like, they don't have a family they can go back to and rely on. They don't have like reserve capital. And I was honestly in that boat, like where I need Perch to succeed if I want to see success. So yeah, going back to your question, it was extremely scary. It was scary for my family. Once I started seeing VC capital coming in, and I like could send them like screenshots, it was like, okay, you may be onto something. But yeah, the first leap was not fun at all.
You're right. I can definitely understand that. And during the pandemic, though, Mike, a lot of companies have struggled, even when they are VC backed. Sometimes you see a lot of funds were pulling back, like, oh, we're not sure that we want to invest. So it's super impressive that you were able to get that investment, especially during the heart of the pandemic, if we can call it that, because we're still in the pandemic, but because you got that investment in November when a lot of funds weren't deploying capital in the way that they were a year prior. So I just want to say that that's super duper cool. And Candice, while we have a very diverse audience that joins our webinars, I think a lot of times something that's missing is that people, oh my God, I'm so sorry. My phone randomly rang and it's Byron Allen from Entertainment Studio. So random. So I'm gonna have to call him back.
That's awesome.
Like, why can't he text first? He doesn't, so I just sent him a voicemail.
That's the most awesome thing that ever happened on a webinar.
I want him to come do something with me in like a month. So random. Back on track. Okay. Candice, what I was getting to with my question for you is that because so many founders and funds weren't necessarily deploying capital the way that they were, and you said you're already reaching your goal and of deploying capital to 12 different companies, and you and Brian are raising this $50 million fund. Is that really, in your opinion, one of the main things that we can leverage funds like yours investing in great entrepreneurs to help move the wealth gap needle?
You know what, Corey, I don't know if I understand the entire question. Can you reframe that for me?
I can totally rephrase it. So funds like yours, and I remember I talked to Keisha about this in Bahia, who helping people create funds like yours that are deploying capital, right, to underserved groups that aren't necessarily getting capital from other VC funds. Is that a strategy to be able to help close the racial wealth gap?
it's part of a very, very large strategy. But there has to be so many, there has to be so many other things happening. We are a very small portion. There are so many things that need to happen in the United States to close the wealth gap, and venture capital is just one asset class. We are just a very small portion of that. We are affecting change amongst, employees and founders of companies. Over time, those things will become exponential. I'm certain that, Mike has a fantastic option pool for the folks that are at his company. And over time, those people will then invest, and you get to have this kind of larger network effect of things that will happen. But we're just a tiny part. And so just as a community, we have to do more.
Can I just say, staying with that for a second, you guys are a tiny part, but an impactful part. I was reading in the Financial Times, I think this was last week or the week before, about the private family office business and its $6 trillion. I don't know, Mark, if you saw this article in the Financial Times. It was talking about the $6 trillion market for the private family office business, and how private family offices actually have a tremendous amount of capital that they could deploy that could do even more to close the racial wealth gap. I'd like to just know from you, I don't know how closely you work with different family offices in your role, but what do you think about that in response to kind of what the Financial Times was writing?
No, absolutely.
I'll just say very quickly, like, family offices have made our fund happen. We are where we are today because over the last 2 years, people, and many of them white people from family offices, have raised their hand and said, we are ready to make a change in this space. For too long, we haven't been making these investments, and we are going to make these investments now. So I can say that I'm moving money from family offices. Our largest LP is a government entity, but most of our LPs come from family offices.
Yeah, I kind of think that the funding it's got to come from a lot of sources. But family offices, if you really think about it, there's a family behind it, and there are people with 2 legs that can make decisions. And a big part of my role, working with clients, but then I'm trying to make this part of my broader role, is helping people connect the fact that they can invest their money in a return-seeking way. This is called double bottom line impact investing. Invest their money in a return-seeking way that actually causes the change that they want to see in society. Somebody can use their entire balance sheet to express their values. And so, when done well, I think money ends up in Candice's fund and is deployed down into founders like Michael. But yes, family offices are a huge opportunity. And potentially a huge part of the solution. And I'm working hard to sort of unlock some of that capital because it can be tremendously impactful.
Yeah, well, I know, Candice, you referenced that the majority of your family offices that have invested in Lightship are, white family offices. And that brings me to like this Peterson Foundation statistic that they brought out, that the majority of the wealth, as we know in this country, is held by white families, but that actual net worth is $360,000. That's just the average white family. I'm not talking about like the rich people, and I'm definitely not talking about the wealthy people, because that's a whole nother level. Just the average person that you probably pass down the street, like if you walk down the street in the pandemic, is $360,000. For the Latinx family, they have a net worth of $73,000, and the average Black family had a net worth of around $68,000. That's super duper low compared to what I'm talking about with the average white family at $360,000. So putting more founders, right, in a position to be able to get investment from a Lightship Capital, or, so that Mark can then invest in other funds in addition to Lightship Capital. I'm not giving Mark away, Candice, to other funds, but just in case he decided to invest. No, you cannot leave the fund ever, Mark. But
you stuck with us no matter what, so
okay.
It's okay.
But in order to get to this point, right, of being able to have more Black people, right, in this position of wealth and to have their own family offices, to be able to invest in funds. Like, those are the conversations, right, that we need to be having at a micro level, to your point, at the dinner table every night. Hey, do you know what it's like if we have this fund and this is what we go out and invest? Are those the type of conversations that you all feel could be more prominent in, I would say, in the Black community? Not necessarily in your families, because it seems like you guys are all pretty astute around finances, but I'm sure you know some people.
So my perspective on this is we are all thinking too small, way too small. And I mean, from every family around the dinner table through Black founders who have crushed it and are super successful. I think we're thinking too small. I think we're not thinking collectively enough. And I think bringing some bigger thought and more collective thought, more engagement, more interaction, exactly what we're doing today, right? And expanding these sorts of things in these conversations. Conversation then leads to action. Action leads to investment, and investment, that leads to great things, as we can see from what Candice is doing and Michael's doing through funders there. But I do think a lot of it has to do with us not thinking big enough. Candice's fund will be somewhere, well north of $50 million. Well, and back to your linking that back to your family office comment, for example, one family office putting $1 billion in something could fund 20 of Candice's funds, and how many other entrepreneurs. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. You mentioned $6 trillion in family office money. We all have a lot to do to chip away at that, because small chips of that can make a lot of progress. And let's be clear, we're trying to overcome 400 years of that wealth gap, right? Of that wealth gap between the 360,000 of average household wealth and the roughly 70,000. There's a lot to overcome, but we got to think big and act big.
Yeah, no, we definitely do. Okay, I'm going to ask you guys one final question. It'll be the same for each of you before we open it up. And I actually forgot to give that programming note at the beginning to drop your questions in the Q&A section, but I see most of you guys already found the section, so it's okay. But feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A section, and we will get to as many of them as possible. And so my final question for all three of you is, because Perch Credit, Mike, we'll start with you, has had so much success. Obviously, Lightship Capital, you guys have been doing extremely well. And Mark has been, as I like to say, our champion in the impact investing space. What makes you optimistic right now, Mike? About this paradigm shift that's happening in the space around inclusive capital and, founders like you getting access to more money?
Yeah, I think the street goes two ways, right? Like, and Mark, Candice, I really appreciate the love and support for entrepreneurs, and me, of course, really working on the granular level. But I think it's also a cycle of having investors and having supporters like Mark and Candice and other investors out there that know that there's a problem and is enacting change. There's only so much that I believe I could do on a granular level to really say I want to make an impact if I don't have the support, capital, resources to really make that impact as well. I really think it's coincides into each other. And it's exciting to know that the conversation is happening both ways. And you're seeing a rise of entrepreneurs, Black founders. I think SoftBank, which is one of our investors, had told us
you just better name drop, Mike. Keep name dropping those investors. You just better.
Yeah, they had told us that Black founders who have raised more than I think $1.5 million are in the 0.1% of all in that capital that has been raised past the 1.5 point. And it's just crazy. Even the number that you shared about just the wealth gap, a $360,000 average income versus 70 or 60 is just I think having these conversations is what's exciting, and the awareness is there, and there's actually action persuading these changes as well. So.
All right, perfect. And Candice, what about you? What makes you optimistic about, this space right now as we move forward?
Yeah, I think we're just, internally within our organization, we're starting to see early signals of success here within our fund, which is absolutely fantastic. And, just watching our peers in the market show their early signs of success. I think that I can see it working, right? We had worked for so long as a collective on trying to get people to believe us in what we were doing. And now people are actually like putting dollars behind things, money is getting invested, and the ball is really rolling. So I'm optimistic that with more work, we will see a greater change in this particular market.
Yeah, I love that. And Mark, how about you?
So for me, it's a few sets of people that make me incredibly optimistic, and they're all young, right? So you've got the Naomi Osaka's out there, who, if I have a hero on the planet right now, it's her, because she is putting everything on the line, and she's excellent at what she does, and she is not backing down from what she believes. That's inspiring to me. But I think of young people like my children, and frankly, like Michael. But Michael is what makes me optimistic, right? And so, you know, and spending engaged time like this and more time with him and his peers, that makes me want to get out of bed in the morning and go figure out ways to get them funded. So actually for two things. Number one, so they can succeed, but even more importantly, so that they can fail, right? So what a great thing would it be for, now Michael, don't go failing on me. But what a great thing for Michael to be able to try, fail, and try again, right? That's the standard that I'm looking for Michael and all of his peers. I love it though that he's going across the bridge, he's burned the bridge behind him, and he's attacking. I love that in a founder, and it's BIPOC founders like Michael that have that mentality, and actually that's where I want to invest.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for this conversation. We actually have to get to some of our audience questions. And Mark, the first one is for you. I'm going to read this word for us so I don't mess this up. Would UBS management, Mark Wilkins, be considering emerging managers and their funds out of the US, i.e., any geographical investment or asset focus? I'm assuming this is referring to if UBS is going to like somehow invest in a fund.
It's rare for UBS to invest our own capital in a fund. You know, what we did with Impact America happened, but I don't know that that's actually a super scalable model. You know, where I'm working is to work on the UBS platform, and frankly, the platform of my peer institutions, right? I'm happy for us to do it. I'm happy for Goldman Sachs to do it. I'm happy for Morgan Stanley to do it. You know, I'm about the mission, not just my company, to get more funds on platforms and accredited and blessed to be able to be invested in by clients. It's clients that have all the capital. It's that $6 trillion that you mentioned before that I want to work to help platforms, companies like mine and others to see the value, to help clients see the value in investing. So I'm working at the platform level to try and do that, not just you know, my firm's capital or another firm's capital.
Okay, perfect. This question is for you, Candice. Actually, it's like 5 questions in one, so I'm just gonna pick one.
Wow. Okay.
It's literally like an entire.
If anybody can handle it, it's Candice.
It's an entire monologue. This talks about regulatory intervention. We're gonna skip past that because I get like really deep.
Yeah.
Do you think investors that are conscious in the environment that we're aware of is increasing enough? Or I guess the larger question is, if the wealth gap is trillions of dollars, can we solve it just from increasing Black entrepreneurship? I'm just going to go ahead and say, no, that's not the only way, but Candice, I'll let you.
So is this the only way? No, this is not the only way. There was this kind of another part of that. Do we think investors' consciousness is
you see it too? Great, because I'm like, there's a lot going on.
Yes. I do believe people are as aware as they can be at this point. If they are not aware of the environment, then they've been under a rock. And so, yes, the awareness is there. Now we need people to take the actual next step of making actual investments and writing checks. Yeah, we're still short of needing to force mandates. I wish we could force some mandates within some endowments around the country, but that's not where we are right now. But no, entrepreneurship is not the only path, but it is a fantastic path. And it doesn't have to be venture backable companies. I think we sometimes forget that this isn't the only way to start a business. Brick and mortar companies do very, very well. You know, I know a really young person that has a window washing company, and they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars window washing. There are wonderful ways to start amazing companies and build wealth for your family. So this is a fantastic path, but is not the only path.
Yeah, no, I love that. Mark, this next question, sorry, no, not Mark. This one goes to Michael. Hold on, guys, we're getting a lot of questions in here. Michael, this person says that they are a small investor working towards entrepreneurship in 2023, very specific on the year. Any advice for a new business owner?
Yeah, I think a couple things that helped me get there is I've always had this conviction about starting tonight. There's a million and one things to do as like a young founder, and you really don't know what to do. Where I found a lot of success is just saying, what can I start on tonight? And just completing a task every day. It's helped me just push the needle on small things that end up growing into a big effect. I think also being comfortable sharing your idea and getting a lot of no's. I literally got 1,000 no's about Perch before we got our first yes, which snowballed into us getting to where we are now. So those are my two big things for young founders.
Yeah, can I piggyback on that a little bit? Just two minor points. 2023 is a long way away, so let's see if we can like move that up a little bit toward maybe 2022. Maybe there are some personal reasons for that. But then also, if this video is being recorded, if there are any entrepreneurs on this video, like if you want to understand like what pattern matching is, like watch Michael. He is a fantastic founder. Everything, and I'm not trying to like big up you today, Mike, but like everything he's saying and the way he's behaving is correct. Look at the background. He's in a hacker house. He is living the life of entrepreneurship. And the things that he's saying will at some point go into a book and people will say, hey, I learned from Mike how I should start a business. Everything that he's saying matches the pattern. It is wonderful.
I'm extremely humble. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's great. And Mike I've done a couple of these sort of webinar events with Michael, and he's always in the kitchen. That is like his shot for all of them. If he ever moved somewhere else in the house, I'd be like, are you in a different location now? Okay, let's get back to this question, to some of the questions. This one, Mark, was for you. I think they wanted to know a bit more about, I know I brought up family funds, which I didn't really prepare you guys for, but the article, the Financial Times article, actually everyone should go read it. It's super duper interesting about that sector. But this is I guess a follow-on question for you, Mark, and they're talking about unlocking balance sheets from like the philanthropic vehicles, like foundations or donor advised funds, to be able to help invest in, I'm assuming, in funds like Lightship Capital. Is that something that you perhaps talk to your clients about at UBS?
Absolutely. I talk to my clients about it. I talk to, and really about the ecosystem. There's a lot of money in donor advised funds. There's in community foundations across the country. And I personally believe that the community foundations can and should do a better job of deploying capital from an entrepreneurial perspective. The money's going to get invested somehow. I think investing it for the double impact is just incredibly important. So yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done there. I also think there are just massive policy things that can be done to drive some of this change. One of the examples is we talk about foundations and endowments, and just take university endowments for a moment. Last time I checked, they've got a bit of a tax exempt status. The government lets them have that. I actually think endowments need to be careful of not doing this, because the government might get involved in their business in a way that has some mandated possibilities there.
Yeah, no, completely agree with that. I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. Mike, I'm going to throw this one back to you. This is a very basic question that, before I say this part, Mike, as a follow-up to Mark's thing, culture banks, I mean, a lot of people don't keep us in the startup category, but technically we're still a startup, and our approach to raising capital has been always through alternative methods. And a lot of our fundraising falls within the philanthropic realm, and having different foundations from the Ford Foundation, from the Walton Family Foundation, support the work that we do so that we are able to, do these types of events. But the way that we even look at raising money is a bit different than a traditional venture capital model, like companies like Michael. But there are so many different ways to get your project funded and alternative capital. And I just want people to be very open-minded and not think this is the only route. If I don't go out and, have SoftBank and Jay-Z back my project, that like my project isn't worth anything. Like, it's just not true. You just have to find, because don't forget what Mike said before he dropped SoftBank. Like, yeah, everybody just drops, SoftBank in their thing, is that he got told no 1,000 times. Like, don't forget that part of the story is important too. It's just as important as him getting funded, the amount of times he was told no. So back to that point, Mike, brings me to, how do you really tap into finding investors, the right investors? Because we all know about wasting time with investors that just don't understand your vision.
Yeah, I'm gonna steal from my co-founder, Ayush. He's a genius, by the way. He started his first startup when he was 16. But he told me this, and it kind of like helped me just cultivate all this into like one sentence. It's like, you have to optimize for luck. And when I say that, it's putting yourself in positions, in rooms with people, talking with people, just always being there and making luck kind of have the biggest opportunity. Like I said, we found Jay-Z and Marcy Venture Partners because I was at a pitch competition in New York for a weekend, met the right person who made the intro, and then made the deal 2 weeks later. And it wasn't me like forcing a conversation. It happened out of love. And if it wasn't for me doing hundreds of pitch competitions while I was in school, I would not have made that introduction to that opportunity, which snowballed everything later. So I think, to the same string of like just continuously working, is continuously putting yourself in opportunities that may not feel right, you may feel too early for, may not feel just comfortable at the moment, and just optimize for that opportunity to just come to you. And it's something my co-founder told me that I feel like we do very well at Perch, from a bare roots level.
Okay, well, because I want to make sure that we stay on time, everyone, I want to thank all of our panelists, Candice, Michael, Mark, Wilkins. Thank you all so much for joining us. Please, everyone, check out Perch Credit. If you don't know about it, look into it, tell a friend, use it yourself. I think that you will be amazed. And then you're like, yeah, I see why he got all these investors. This is dope. Also, Candice and her husband, Brian, are investing in really great companies. You should definitely check out the companies that they've invested in as well, and read the latest article about Mark Wilkins in Barron's. You'll be so impressed and think, gosh, this is a guy that was on the webinar. How did Corey get him to say yes? I don't know, folks, but every now and again, he says yes, and I'm very grateful. So thank you all very much. We'll be back next month with another Normalizing Black Wealth webinar. So stay tuned, check out the email, and a recording of this will be sent to all of our participants today. Thank you all very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was great.